I'm Ryan Klumpner, Vice Chair of the San Diego Housing Commission Board of Commissioners. It is 9:02 on July 9th, 2021, and I'm calling to order the special meeting of the board. The process we're using for today's meeting is authorized by Governor Gavin Newsom's Executive Order N-29-20, which he issued on March 17th, 2020 to address the COVID-19 public health emergency. The meeting is occurring by video conference with all board members, our CEO, Housing Commission staff, and General Counsel participating by video. The chair of the board, Stephanie Benvenuto, is unable to be with us this morning. I also want to take a moment to announce a change in the board. Dion Akers has resigned from the board because he has taken on a new position as the Regional Government Affairs Manager in the Office of Mayor Todd Gloria. We will miss him as a commissioner, but we look forward to continuing to work with him in his new role in the mayor's office. And we all wish him the best of luck with his new position. Now, for the record, I will ask each board member to indicate your presence as I say your name. Commissioner Maggie Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Johanna Hester. I saw her here, I didn't hear. Okay, great. Commissioner Keely Hubbard is not with us today, is that correct?
Correct.
And Commissioner Mitch Mitchell.
Present.
Thank you. No members of the public are in attendance. However, members of the public may watch the video conference and hear the audio of today's meeting, which is being streamed live online. The agenda for today's meeting included a link to the website for the San Diego Housing Commission Board of Commissioners, where the public can address the live streaming for today's meeting, can access the live stream for today's meeting. The public has been provided with an alternative opportunity to provide comments to the board through an online comment form and a toll-free phone number. A link to the online comment form was included on the agenda for today's meeting, which was posted on the San Diego Housing Commission's website, www.sdhc.org, on Thursday, July 1st, 2021. The agenda for the public comment form explained that comments about items on the agenda will be read into the record as they were, if they were submitted by 4 p.m. yesterday, Thursday, July 8th. Non-agenda public comments submitted by 8 o'clock this morning will be read into the record. In addition, members of the public who wish to speak on an item may call the toll-free phone number that is included on the agenda. Members of the public should monitor the meeting through the live video stream available through the Housing Commission's website, sdhc.org. Again, today's agenda includes links to the website for this board where the public can access the live streaming for today's meeting. Members of the public should call the toll-free number only when the item they wish to comment on is introduced. If a caller begins to comment on an item that is different from the item currently being considered, they will be asked to hang up and call back into the meeting at the correct time. Members of the public will have 3 minutes each to provide their comments. However, if a large number of callers wish to speak on a single agenda item, comments will be limited to 1 minute each. Non-agenda public comment, the phone line is now open to provide non-agenda public comments. I believe that we're now giving a 90-second period for anybody to call in. Is that correct, Scott?
That's correct.
Okay. So this is the time when members of the public may provide comments to the Housing Commission Board of Commissioners about topics that are not on today's agenda, but involve a subject within the Housing Commission's area of responsibility. The Housing Commission cannot take action on non-agenda public comments. Again, the number is 833-610-2513. We received one written non-agenda public comment for today's meeting. James Hughes wrote Southern Hotel. Mr. Hughes also submitted an attachment via email about offering the Southern Hotel for sale to the Housing Commission. Mr. Hughes' comment and the email attachment were forwarded to the commissioners yesterday. I will now ask our Vice President of Communications, Scott Marshall, if he has any callers for non-agenda public comments.
We have one caller who just came up in the queue, and I will enter that call at the moment. Our first caller is identified as Haley Jones with a number ending in 1632. You may begin your comment.
Yes, I'm here. Again, my name is Haley Jones. I work for Good Steward Management downtown. We manage single room occupancy hotels downtown, and I wanted to comment on the NOFA process. We, as a management company, would like to assist our property owners in applying for the NOFA so that we can improve the buildings for the tenants and serve our communities, but we are having a lot of difficulty in navigating the process and would like more assistance from the Housing Commission in actually doing the process, as we are relegated to a budget that is narrowed by low income rents, and we can't hire a special grant writer or someone who can help us apply. So that's something that we'd like to request be discussed by the board and maybe looked at closely. And that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Scott, do we have any additional comments?
We do not have any other callers.
Great. Thank you, caller, for your input. We really appreciate that. This concludes the non-agenda public comments. Commissioner comments. Now I will ask if any commissioners would like to make any comments.
Sorry, Vice Chair Clumpner, as you were speaking, another call popped into the queue. Would you like me to take that?
Yeah, let's take it.
Okay. The next caller is identified as a wireless caller with a number ending in 2989. Caller, you can begin making your comment.
Good morning. My name is James Hughes, and we own the historic Southern Hotel building in downtown San Diego in the financial district. In addition to it being an attractive structure in the bustling neighborhood of that area, it's also an 89 unit single room occupancy hotel. And we'd like to have an offer from the Housing Commission to purchase our property. And this seems to be a good place to start the discussion. If you've not received a sale flyer that I submitted to the board, we can send you one. But in essence, we're asking $170,000 per unit for a basically fully occupied, stable building. We agree with the Housing Commission board and staff with the need of preservation of naturally occurring affordable housing, or NOAHs, as you refer to it. And that's exactly what the Southern Hotel has been for the last 80 years. We'd like to propose that the Housing Commission acquire our property using a Section 1033 exchange that would be modeled after the Hillcrest Inn transaction that was completed last year. That seemed to be a sound investment. And Southern Hotel has all the same specifications, such as need for middle income project, as well as SRO long-term affordability. Just quickly, Southern Hotel is a four-story building. It's at the corner of 6th and B Street. It was built in 1915 for workers who were building out the Balboa Park for the exhibition, the Panama exhibition. There's 89 rooms. 50 of them are restricted already. The ground floor commercial consists of 4 locally owned restaurants who serve the area office buildings. All of our restaurants survived last year. They're open, and I'm glad to report that. We have a finished basement that has rental spaces in it too. There's about 40,000 square feet of the building. It has it's fully sprinklered, has a good roof and a solar system with 150 solar panels. We pass our fire inspections and safety inspections with flying colors. It's a great building and a good location. We have an operating budget, a capital reserve account. We have a savings account for our taxes and insurance, and we have a very long operating history.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes.
So
That concludes your 3
appreciate it.
minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity to present. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll return to commissioner comments now. Would any commissioners like to make a comment? Seeing none, the next item on our agenda is the report from the president and CEO. Mr. Gentry, all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Plumpner. I do have a few remarks, a few items I want to point out to the board. The first is I am delighted to announce that Molly Chase has been promoted to the position of Vice President of Policy, effective 1st of the month. As you recall, Molly joined the commission from previously working for city council member on the city council staff late last year. And Molly came in at a director's level, and she's moved up to the VP level, I think as fast as anybody I've ever seen. She has shown a unique ability to advocate successfully for policies that support her mission, and has demonstrated an outstanding level of skills and depth of understanding of the policymaking process at all levels. And she has also developed an outstanding working relationship with electeds and their staff members as well. And so I'd just like to ask you to share with me congratulations to Molly for the great work she has done leading our policy team. I'll point out that when I moved here 13 years ago, one of the first things I did was to restructure the organization based on more on private sector model. And the difference between a director's level and VP and above, the VP and above is heavily involved in relationship management, dealing with members of the public, other entities we do business with, as well as the board. And so, whereas the director level and below is typically dealing with more with programmatic and analytical issues, the Molly can do it both, can do it all. So Molly, congrats, and I'd like to ask the board to share with me congratulations to Molly. A good example of thank you. A good example of Molly's good work is a couple of other things I want to share with you that have just occurred. On July the 1st, both U.S. Senators from California, Feinstein and Padilla, sent a letter to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen to support a request that had my signature on it, but had Molly's writing done back in May, to request that there be a major amendment in federal policy relative to the Federal Emergency Rental Assistance Program Fund to help our customers pay down personal housing related debt due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Making this change, we believe, would help our families who have incurred debt like high interest credit cards or payday loans to remain current with their rent during the pandemic. Currently, one of the shortcomings in the emergency rental law, I believe, is that families who have gone to great lengths to secure and make their rental payments, including incurring high levels of debt, are not eligible for recovery of those payments through this process if they left the rent unpaid that could be. So I think this is could be a major change in federal policy, and we've got both senators supporting that with the Treasury Secretary. Different but relative to that is Assembly Bill 832, which just passed the state legislature last month and was signed into law by Gavin Newsom on June the 28th. This legislation makes a major difference in the rent stabilization program, the Housing Stability Assistance Program, and we can now pay up to 100% of the rent obligations for qualifying low-income households, rather than 80% as was the case before. This is in background. And we can cover 100% of forward-looking rent as well, rather than the 25%, which was previously in the previous program. This commission took the lead back in April of advocating to the state that they changed the law to allow us to do so. And with this law, we anticipate being able to fully expend now all of the coronavirus relief funds previously allocated to the Housing Stability Assistance Program, which I think is a marked difference from what we've been able to report to you before. That said, I'm going to ask Jeff Davis, if he would please, to give an update on that Housing Stability Assistance Program, including some current numbers. Jeff, if you would please, sir.
Yes, good morning, commissioners. So we continue to review applications and disperse the payments as quickly as possible to help those families in need that have been affected by the pandemic. Thus far, we've issued payments just shy of $40 million, and we've been able to help 5,500 families. So we have 14,300 families that have submitted completed applications for help through our program. And more than 12,700 applications have been started, but are pending completion. We continue to actually see a steady stream of applications coming in on a daily basis. In addition to the extensive community outreach efforts that we've previously shared with the board, our outreach continued in the month of June. On June 8th, the city of San Diego began a text message outreach initiative for the program. By the end of June, text messages about the program had been sent to about 20,600 individuals with income up to $6,700 per year who reside in one of the 10 zip codes in the city with the highest COVID-19 case rates that are also in our signature and enterprise communities. We also worked with the Office of Governor Gavin Newsom to hold an outreach and application assistance event on June 11th at the Bayview Baptist Church to help interested households complete applications on site. We provided more than 1,600 printed information flyers to Councilmember Sean Elo Rivera's office for distribution in communities of Council District 9. On June 17th, the Housing Commission emailed information about the program to approximately 17,500 city public utility department customers who are delinquent in their bills. And on that same day, we also worked with SDG&E and the San Diego and Imperial Counties Labor Council to hold an application assistance event at the Skyline Hills Library. This event also helped households complete applications there on site. So our staff across multiple departments are working very hard and collaboratively with organizations throughout the community to help as many qualifying households as quickly as possible. And that concludes my update.
Thank you, Jeff. And also, I'd like to issue a thanks to this board for your ongoing leadership and support of this program as well. In particular, board members Hester and Mitchell, and being with staff and helping to do outreach to get maximum response as we can get from the public. And Mr. Chairman, with your permission, before I complete my report, I'd like to stop at this point and to see if you all on the board might have any questions or comments, or if there's anything we can clarify about this particular program.
Mr. Mitchell.
I would just echo, I want to commend Jeff, you and Molly in particular. Just, I think you guys have been outstanding to work with. And I had a conversation with Bridget Browning the other day and talked about my concern that, you know, it's heating up, the weather's heating up. I think that there's confusion still in the market about, you know, landlords, because you keep seeing mixed messages. Are they getting 100% or 80%? But Bridget and I talked about, you know, the last fair was such a success. I think that you know, planning a couple more is important, and she agreed. So she's going to be approaching you both about an event in July and one in August as we approach the September, you know, timeline. But thus far, I think it's gone well. And I think, Jeff, what you said is you're just short of 40 million thus far. And so I think we're making good headway. And if, you know, if we can continue to be aggressive and, you know, put this money in the right hands, I think that we've done a great public service. And I don't know what the numbers are for the county and their structure. I know they got a late start, but I can tell you that the people who are being helped are really, really appreciative. So kudos to you guys.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Any other commissioners?
And I will be immodest enough to point out that this agency was the first to advocate to the state to increase the payments to the landlords to the full 100% rather than taking the haircuts. And we were joined by other entities as well, but we were the first. And I think that the state changing its policy was a major change in course, and it's going to make a big difference in getting this money allocated. There's nothing else, Mr. Chair. I've got a couple of other brief items and then we'll be done. Hold on just a second. Got rid of too many pieces of paper here. The Housing Commission was recently featured in 2 national digital publications regarding our programs and collaborations. First, and this one is truly significant, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's Office of Policy Development and Research published an article in its periodic Edge online magazine. The article is titled, quote, "Robust Partnerships Help San Diego Deliver Effective Pandemic Relief," unquote. It highlighted the COVID-19 Housing Stability Assistance Program that we just talked about, as well as the Operation Shelter to Home initiative to address homelessness during the pandemic. The article refers to these programs as examples of, quote, "how mobilizing organizational relationships for change can break what needs to be broken and reimagine what these systems can accomplish," unquote. In addition, a online magazine called the State Tech Magazine highlighted the Housing Commission in an article about third-party cybersecurity assessments. And we've all seen horror stories lately in the press about insecurity and their cybersecurity measures taken across the country. This article discussed an assessment that the Housing Commission's Information Technology Department obtained as part of our transition to having staff work from home due to the pandemic. And my compliments there, my thanks to Beto Juarez and his IT staff for some excellent work that they've done. And I know that they're a group that typically only gets noticed when things don't work, and they've made things work extremely well for us, particularly as we've transitioned to a working from home environment. One other final series of highlights, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to point out, and that is the San Diego Housing Commission had a number of collaborations with other parties that were honored with the annual Ruby Awards from the San Diego Housing Federation just last month. We received a direct award for, quote, "innovations in response to COVID-19 for our purchase of the 2 extended stay hotels last year." I'll point out again that these properties created 332 permanent affordable housing units with access to supportive services for individuals experiencing homelessness during the COVID-19 pandemic. The hotel purchases also were among the reasons cited for the City of San Diego receiving the Government Agency of the Year award. The Operation Shelter to Home initiative to address homelessness also was one of the city's efforts that supported this award. And in addition to all that, there was an award to the San Ysidro Senior Village Development, 2 awards actually, one in supportive housing and also one in the environmental category. And the Housing Commission had awarded rental housing vouchers and a development loan to the National Community Renaissance to support this particular development. San Ysidro Senior Village provides 850 affordable units for seniors who experience homelessness. And finally, the final award was to Habitat for Humanity's COM22 development of 11 townhomes, which received the Ruby Award for Project of the Year, New Construction. The Housing Commission committed up to $770,000 through its first-time homebuyer program to help eligible households buy homes in this development. And I'll point out that a lot of this came about because of Lori Holtfiler, who, as you all know, just moved from Habitat to the Building Industry Association, came to me a couple of years ago after she had some difficulty getting the community Poway to accept an affordable housing development. And we worked together to partner with the Bridge folks who own the property in the Barrio Logan neighborhood where COM22 is located to put these 11 home ownership units in place. And I think all of these awards reflect the importance and the success of the Housing Commission's collaborative efforts to create affordable housing for households with low income or experiencing homelessness. If you all have heard me say any number of times that I don't particularly care who does the work or gets the credit, as long as our customers get served. I think these awards are examples of the way the Housing Commission works with other parties to make sure the needy people in San Diego get served. And these Ruby Awards this year were truly significant. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report, and thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rick. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the special meeting of June 11th, 2021. The phone line is now open for public comments about the minutes. Please call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. We are now going to take a 90-second period where the phone line is open for anybody that would like to comment. Again, the number is 833-610-2513. Scott, I assume you'll just let me know when we're at the 90-second mark.
Yes, we have about 20 seconds left.
Great.
We do not have any callers on the minute.
Great. No written public comments were submitted regarding the minutes. We do not have any callers at this time. This concludes the public comment period for the minutes. Do any commissioners wish to make any changes to the minutes, or do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Great. We have a motion by Commissioner Davis and a second by Commissioner Mitchell to approve the minutes from the special meeting of June 11th, 2021. For the record, I will ask each commissioner to say your vote on the motion when I state your name. Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Hester. I see a visual aye. Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
And I will add my aye vote. How many commissioners do we have here? That's 4 commissioners voted in favor of the motion and no commissioners are opposed. The motion carries 4-0. This morning, we have a consent agenda now. This morning, I'm proposing that item 102 be placed on the consent agenda. This is the Housing Commission's strategic plan for fiscal year 2022 through 2024. The phone line is now open. I would also point out that we heard this item at the previous meeting with the full presentation, which is also public. The phone line is now open for public comments about item 102. Please call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. No written public comments were submitted on this item. Again, the number is 833-610-2513. Do we have any callers?
We do not have any callers. We have about 1 minute left on the clock.
Okay.
That concludes the time, and there are no callers for this item.
Great. This concludes the public comment period for item 102. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Mitchell and a second by Commissioner Davis to approve the consent agenda. For the record, I will ask each commissioner to say your vote on the motion when I state your name. Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Hester? Commissioner Mitchell?
Aye.
And I will add my vote. We have 4 commissioners who voted in favor of the motion and no commissioners have opposed it. It carries 4-0. Thank you very much. On to our action items. We will now proceed with action items on our consent agenda. The PowerPoint presentations were emailed to commissioners yesterday, July 8th, and are posted on the Housing Commission's website. Item 100, our first item is item 100, the approval of contract with St. Vincent de Paul to operate the day center for individuals experiencing homelessness. The phone line is now open for public comment about item 100. Please call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. No written public comments were submitted regarding this item. Again, the number is 833-610-2513. We will take public comments after the staff presentation. Executive Vice President of Strategic Initiatives, Lisa Jones, and Director of Housing First Administration, Casey Snell, will present this item. Please begin when you are ready.
Good morning, commissioners. We're here before you today to present the proposed 6-month operating agreement with St. Vincent de Paul Village using a non-competitive procurement method under Procurement Policy 9.4 for the operation of the day center for adults experiencing homelessness. Next slide. The Day Center for Adults Experiencing Homelessness is a city-owned facility that provides a safe and secure site during the day. A variety of basic services and resources are available to meet the needs of people experiencing unsheltered homelessness. The Day Center is funded with Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, Public Services Set-Aside Funds, which were authorized by a City Council action in 2012. The action allocates $500,000 annually for the operation of the Day Center and authorizes the Housing Commission to administer Day Center subrecipient contracts on behalf of the city. CDBG funds the daily operations and services of the center. St. Vincent de Paul Village currently operates the Day Center through a contract with the Housing Commission. Recently, the city identified funding to increase the standard annual operating budget by an additional $300,000 annually in city general funds to support general operations. Typically, an increase to the fiscal year contract would be presented to the board before July 1st, 2021 for recommended approval. However, Housing Commission staff were not made aware of the additional funds being allocated by the city until recently. So today's meeting is the earliest we could bring the item to the Board of Commission for consideration. Next slide. The Day Center is located in the East Village neighborhood of San Diego at 299 17th Street. The hours of operation at the Day Center are Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. with weekend hours of 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Services provided at the Day Center include restrooms and washing facilities, off-site showers, mail services, telephone and computer access, self-sufficiency needs assessments and referral services, and housing navigation services. With the closure of many of the city's publicly accessed resources, the Day Center has served as a critical resource for mitigating the spread of COVID-19 by continuing to provide these much-needed services. Day Center operations have shifted to accommodate the need for increased basic needs services to provide adequate access to sanitation resources, such as showers, hand washing stations, restrooms, and laundry, the provision of information on preventing the spread of COVID-19, and distribution of personal protective equipment, or PPE, to Day Center clients. In fiscal year 2021, the Day Center served over 5,500 unduplicated individuals experiencing homelessness. Next slide.
Of the over 5,500 people served at the Day Center during fiscal year 2021, over 99% were extremely low income, and the remaining 1% had very low or low income. The average length of use of the Day Center is 10 months for people who did not exit the program during the fiscal year. Basic services such as showers, laundry cycles, mail, computers, and the resource room have a combined total of 59,068 services accessed by Day Center clients. 710 unduplicated individuals were provided with secure storage, and an additional 388 resource referrals were made on behalf of the clients. Next slide. St. Vincent de Paul Village has operated the day center since July 1st, 2016, when the contract was awarded using a competitive solicitation. When the contract expired on June 30th, 2020, the Housing Commission entered into a 6-month operating agreement with St. Vincent de Paul Village to operate the day center. This decision was related to a pending third-party evaluation of both the day center and the Housing Navigation Center to be concluded by the close of calendar year 2020. With the onset of COVID-19 and the resulting government mandates that significantly changed the service delivery approach, the evaluation process was suspended. In addition, during the course of Operation Shelter to Home at the San Diego Convention Center, new system navigation and service coordination activities were piloted. This resulted in the new Homelessness Response Center program model, which was presented and approved by both the City Council and the Housing Commission Board. The day center has remained a critical intervention for adults experiencing homelessness during the pandemic. Competitive solicitation at this time to identify a new operator could have resulted in potential gaps in service. This would have adversely affected the population the center serves. Continuing services without gaps was especially critical to ensure ongoing access to health and sanitation resources during the height of the pandemic. To that end, the Housing Commission issued a second 6-month contract from January 1, 2021 to June 30th, 2021. As the impact of the pandemic has lessened in our region, it is now appropriate to start a competitive procurement process for this contract. In the interim, however, it is important that services remain in place. Therefore, the Housing Commission is requesting to exercise Procurement Policy 9.4 to use a sole source justification to enter into an agreement with St. Vincent de Paul Village to continue operating the day center through December 31st, 2021. A request for proposals is planned to be released in the next few weeks. Next slide. Staff recommends that the Housing Commission Board take the actions detailed in staff report HCR 21-075 and shown on the next 2 slides. Next slide. Next slide. That concludes our presentation. We are available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Scott, do we have any public comments at this time?
No, we do not have any callers.
Great. This concludes the public comment period for item 100. Commissioners, do you have any questions on this item?
I just have
Commissioner Mitchell.
Chairman, the need for it. There continue questions about is there anything that can be done to try and create a much more organized effort with Deacon Jim and Father Joe's, around, because there tends to be a lot of things, people, and I don't know if we put any requirements on the area itself of just kind of the organization and the chaos and the clutter, because I think a lot of people always ask, why other people, it seems like there's really not much supervision on certain elements of, people are piling into the streets. It tends to be a clash and when people are, driving up and down the street and we get questions about it. Do we put requirements on the funding? And when we offer funding, we just say, hey, operate it and no other requirements? Or Lisa, are there efforts to, is there a process by which we can make suggestions of things that we're hearing from the surrounding residents, about the operation?
So I apologize, Commissioner Mitchell, you cut out a bit in the beginning of that, but I think I get the gist of your question. So there are requirements on any operator in regards to managing the sites themselves, right? So the sites have a footprint that they're responsible for. When it's activity that's happening outside of that footprint, so it's happening on public land and or city controlled streets, things of that nature, it's a combination of a partnership between that operator and environmental services, neighborhood policing division, homeless outreach teams, to really try to manage those exterior locations. Frankly, when we talk about this operation was originally approved in 2012 at $500,000 a year, and we are now in 2021. There's been a lot of time in between that time where cost of living, cost of wages, all of those kinds of things have gone up. So bringing in additional resources to better support this project, I think will be helpful in that regard. In addition, and it's not mentioned here because it's not part of the program budget, the city has also identified about $125,000 for repairs to the site as well. So for some physical improvements. The focus on actually the next item that's coming up, which is the outreach item, the increase of $1 million to the outreach project. Most of that funding and those staff will be in the downtown area, District 3 area. There's a few other districts that will obviously get increases as well. So that should also help mitigate. But it's I would certainly acknowledge that during the pandemic, the impacts on the neighborhood in that area, throughout that area, have only continued to increase.
I agree. I think that anything we can do to try and address that will only serve to help us as we pursue new properties and new projects. And because anybody driving down by this site often will say, well, that's definitely not something I want anywhere near me. So if they're looking at properties near me, that's a good example. So
certainly, absolutely. And the RFP itself frames a lot of those expectations out as well.
Thank
Good
you. Commissioner Hester.
Good morning. Through the chair, Lisa or Casey. The one thing that was sort of that stood out to me is the hours of operation. It closing at 4 on weekdays and it closing at 2 on weekends. And I'm imagining if, you know, if I was the person living in that situation, that I would want those hours to be longer if I was trying to go to work in the daytime and then I need sort of this place. Like can you talk a little bit about the hours of operation and how?
And I think to a large degree, that's why the 6 a.m. opening is important, right? Because that does give access to people before a work day or other things like that would begin. Frankly, in order to increase hours to like a 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. as an example. And this is not an overnight shelter, this is just a day center, but to increase those kinds of hours, we'd need significant additional funding to do that. So that would be, the city would have to allocate additional funds. We obviously, this is a service that cannot be understaffed. And I think that's evidenced by some of Commissioner Mitchell's comments as well. So really, in order to do that, we'd need to find a significant additional funding. But I would certainly agree that the value would be there.
Any other commissioner comments? I just had one question regarding, so the count of the non-duplicated clients over 5,000. I mean, that's a really impressive number in my mind. And in particular, I was thinking about this in relation to the point in time count, which obviously it's different point in time versus looking at just less than a year window period. But it did sort of cross my mind. How closely are we comparing the PIT count to the data that we're receiving from providers? And is that providing any additional insight into the total population that we're trying to serve here? Because obviously there's always an ongoing question of kind of how many people at any given time we're trying to serve. And so I appreciate the detailed metrics that are being tracked there. And I was just curious if you could speak to how it relates to the PIT.
Absolutely. And I mean, to some degree, how it relates to the PIT remains to be seen when we consider that in 2021, we didn't have a point in time count. What I will say is like your comment, a point in time count is a single moment in time, whereas this sort of reflects usage over a fiscal annual year period. So that shows that there are people that are coming in and out of the system, right? So there are folks that do not remain in the system for a long time. The downtown partnership also does, their regular sort of downtown count. I think another number to consider is also the annual homeless inventory report. So the AHAR, which is something that's collected for HUD via our regional continuum of care, looks at the system as a whole during an annual period. And I believe the numbers were far upwards of over 20,000 that came in and out of the system in the last period. And in fact, and we're hoping to bring something back in the near future on this as a workshop, we're putting a lot of this information now up on our own website under the Community Action Plan on Homelessness dashboards that speak to some of these things and how these numbers reflect each other and the difference between a point in time count and like an annual count. But I think, that the 5,500 plus in a single year is reflective of who is moving in and out of just the downtown area.
Mr. Gentry.
Just to reiterate the same thing, I think Lisa went ahead and made my point. That is that the homelessness numbers, they're dynamic and they're ever changing with people moving in and out of status rather than a static number. And I recall a study that the Regional Task Force on the Homeless made about 5 years ago when I was sharing the continuum of care then for the first time. And we noted over 20,000 individuals then who touched the homelessness delivery system in a 12-month time period of 2016. I doubt that it's changed terribly since then. So I think that trying to convert this from a dynamic to static numbers and understanding what is an ever-changing set of or cohort of customers is going to be a continuing issue for us.
Yeah, and I mean, thank you both, and that kind of helps. And where my mind was actually sort of going with that is, it does sort of give us some insight into the rate at which people are turning over. If we have both a point in time and a larger window, then in theory we should be able to kind of compare the two and know, how quickly people are moving through and sort of project forward to how many people we're likely to be serving at any moment in the future, which, I mean, it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing. And having those numbers up publicly is, I think very helpful, given especially just the number of people who are not us. Everybody has some level of interest and concern in homelessness. So and I'm sure that we all deal with the same questions where people have theories about how many people they think there are and what types they are, and it often doesn't really match the reality. So the more we can put the reality out, I think the better off we all are.
And if I could, I think that the dashboards that Lisa's going to talk about later in the morning will give additional clarity to those numbers.
Excellent.
Yeah, Chairman, I just would say this. I think that the point in time count, and I will say this, with all earnestness, I think we've all become really we rely on the point in time kind of as a barometer of the work and the effort that's happening. And the team has heard me say this before. I commend Lisa et al., Molly, Jeff, Rick, you guys. The organization and the agency had to transition into becoming much more of a homeless focused support services entity, and that is important. I do know that there's a lot of conversation amongst the downtown business community right now about the point in time count, how accurate it was. I know that we aren't planning to do it this year. COVID impacted last year. Perception is reality, and Chairman Plummer, this. I mean, the perception right now is that downtown has become worse. There's more people.
We're losing you, Commissioner Mitchell.
Mr. Gentry and I had this conversation. I think he made a great statement. Am I back?
Sort of.
I'd like to hear my great statement. I don't do that many of them, Mitch. I'd love to hear it.
that as the cost of housing, the cost of real estate, the cost of housing has gone up. The number of people on the streets has gone up, and so we have work to do, and it is a very fluid number because we're continuing to see the pressure of San Diego on the cost of living on the residents of this region.
Thank you for those comments, Rick. I don't know how you're working with the Wi-Fi in Mitch's house, but the only part I caught was your great comment there, which was a very good point.
Well, that's all I needed to hear, sir. But thank you for reiterating.
Okay, do we have a motion on the item?
So moved.
We have Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Davis, a second by Commissioner Hester to approve item 100. As I say your name, please state your vote on the motion. Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Hester?
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell? And I vote in favor of the motion, which carries 4-0. Thank you very much. On to item 101. The amendments to the operating agreement with PATH for the Coordinated Street Outreach Program. The phone line is now open for public comments about item 101. please call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. No written public comments were submitted regarding this item. Again, the number to call is 833-610-2513. We will take public comments after the staff presentation. Again, Lisa and Casey will be presenting on this item. You may begin when you're ready.
Good morning. Just next slide, please. Thank you. One of the key items for consideration in the Community Action Plan on Homelessness for the City of San Diego, which the City Council accepted in October 2019, was to develop an outreach framework that coordinates citywide efforts more effectively and moves the approach from contact-based to street-based case management with a housing focus. This type of outreach relies on service providers with expertise in social work to carry out core outreach functions. In support of this goal, the city took action in October 2020 to allocate $1.5 million for the purpose of creating a coordinated street outreach program, which the San Diego Housing Commission coordinates and administers. Next slide. The proposed service model incorporates the recommendations in the Community Action Plan, which identifies street outreach as an essential element of the city's homeless crisis response system. This effort also marks a transition in the city's delivery of street outreach services to a more client-centered and housing-focused model. The program design, funding, and leverage resources provide the infrastructure necessary to deploy rapid crisis response teams and to maintain ongoing street-based case management activities. Program operations are informed by and aligned with the ongoing policy developments and trainings that the Regional Task Force on the Homeless facilitates in collaboration with the City of San Diego, County of San Diego, and the Housing Commission. Next slide. PATH has been serving individuals experiencing homelessness for more than 30 years. They've been active in the San Diego region since 2013, serving more than 1,100 individuals experiencing homelessness throughout the San Diego region on an annual basis. In conjunction with the County of San Diego, PATH also has operated specialized street outreach programs, which focus on engaging the community's most vulnerable and often medically fragile individuals experiencing homelessness. As the operator of the region's whole person wellness and health homes programs, PATH has refined its approach in engaging frequent users of the healthcare system or Medi-Cal beneficiaries who are experiencing chronic medical and mental health conditions. Next slide.
The coordinated outreach program consists of two distinct yet complementary teams, each with a specific focus, set of duties, and outcomes. The mobile homelessness response team provides ongoing, intensive, street-based case management services for prioritized clients using staff trained in crisis intervention and motivational interviewing techniques. Staff provide assistance to address any barriers that clients are experiencing in attaining and transitioning to permanent or longer-term housing. This may include assistance with obtaining identification and access to medical care and income, such as benefit or employment resources. The rapid response team focuses on areas with known concentrations of individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness. Engagements are intentional and emphasize immediate intervention and problem solving while striving to improve the client's sense of safety in helping them meet their basic needs. Next slide. Program staff work alongside existing outreach activities and leverage resources from other programs PATH administers, including whole person wellness, enhanced outreach teams, and the Mid-City Outreach Program. Operations occur 7 days a week, except for city observed holidays. Weekend and after the Housing Commission and city to facilitate community referrals to outreach service and to analyze existing data to determine resource allocation. Next slide. The primary goal of all outreach activities is to facilitate housing placements. The Housing Commission monitors several performance metrics that will help establish a baseline and inform the development of future outcome measures and potential performance improvements. The program operator monitors and reports on data related to client engagements and progress, exits to housing and longer-term destinations, as well as resource referrals. This slide shows program data from March 2021, when the program became fully staffed, through May 2021. 546 individuals served by the mobile homelessness response and rapid response teams, 38 exits to permanent or longer-term housing, 63 placements into shelter, 685 instances of supportive services provided, and 39 instances of supportive services referrals. Next slide, please. The total funding amount allocated by the city for fiscal year 2022 is $2.5 million. This amount includes the Housing Commission's administrative costs and an additional allocation of $1 million to the project from last year's operating budget. This $1 million was detailed in the mayor's allocation of $10 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds, specifically for critical resources to address homelessness. Future option years will be exercised contingent on the city allocating funds through its annual budgeting cycle. Next slide. The increase to the PATH operating budget and ARPA funds that are part of the city's general fund will support more than 13 additional full-time equivalent positions. The mobile homelessness response team outreach specialists provide intensive street-based case management to refer often hard to reach individuals with the goal of engaging them in services, entering them into the homelessness system, and ultimately moving them from the street into permanent homes. The clinical outreach specialist has additional experience in behavioral health and supports the team's efforts to engage individuals with severe mental illness and substance use disorder. The rapid response team outreach specialists respond to calls from the community and perform routine outreach to hotspots of people experiencing homelessness. They use diversion strategies and community supports to quickly connect people to housing, supportive services, or more intensive outreach programs that will continue engagement. Next slide, please. Today, we're requesting that the Housing Commission Board recommend that the Housing Authority of the City of San Diego take the actions requested in Staff 4 HCR-051 and detailed on this slide. Next slide. That concludes our presentation. We're available to answer any questions.
Great. Do we have any public comments at this time?
We do not have any callers on this item.
Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments on the item? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Davis and a second by Commissioner Hester to approve item 101. As I say your name, please state your vote on the motion. Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Hester?
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Aye.
I vote in favor of the motion as well, which carries 4-0. Thank you very much. Item 103, our next item is the loan recommendation preliminary bond authorization and TEFRA hearing for Levant Senior Cottages. The TEFRA hearing is now open. The phone line is also now open for the public comments about item 103. Please call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. No written public comments were submitted for this item. Again, the number to call is 833-610-2513. We will take public comments after the staff presentation. Vice President of Multifamily Housing Finance, Colin Miller, is presenting this item. You may begin when you're ready, Colin.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. The item for you today is a request to approve a residual receipts loan up to $6 million and take the preliminary steps to issue tax-exempt and taxable multifamily housing revenue bonds for the construction of Levant Senior Cottages. Next slide, please. The proposed project will be comprised of 126 units, which will be a mix of studio and one-bedroom units for individuals aged 55 and older, and one unrestricted manager's unit. The 126 units will remain affordable for 55 years at 25 to 50% of San Diego's area median income. The development will be located at 6950 Levant Street in the Linda Vista neighborhood in Council District 7. The project is served by MTS bus lines within a quarter mile of the site, and the Hazard Center trolley station is 1.6 miles from the property. Next slide, please. The site is a vacant parcel owned by the County of San Diego and will be leased to the developer for 70 years for $1 per year. The county lease requires the construction of 20 individual 1- and 2-story buildings. Due to the funding sources, the project will be subject to Davis-Bacon and prevailing wages. Next slide, please. The developer is Wakeland Housing and Community Development Corporation, an experienced nonprofit developer with a history of successful projects developed in partnership with the Housing Commission. The developer applied for and was given a preliminary award recommendation through the FY21 NOFA for $6 million, up to $6 million and 70 project-based vouchers. Future residents would be selected from the Housing Commission's waiting list. Next slide, please. So Levant Senior will be located on a 4.49 acre parcel that is directly east of the Linda Vista Community Park, identified by the red tab on this slide. Next slide, please. As shown on this slide, multiple bus lines are located within a quarter mile of the property on Genesee Avenue as well as on Linda Vista Road. On the map, they are represented by blue squares with a symbol of a bus. It's kind of small, but they're there. Next slide, please. Trolley service is available 1.6 miles from the property at the Hazard Center Station in Mission Valley. Next slide, please. The total development cost for the project will be approximately $51.6 million, which equates to $406,632 per unit. Permanent sources of funding include a conventional loan, a loan from the State of California Housing and Community Development Multifamily Housing Program, a loan from the Housing Commission if approved today, tax credit equity, as well as a deferred developer fee. The county funds, a proposed commission loan, and project-based vouchers will trigger the payment of prevailing wages as mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. The property will be comprised of 108 studio units, as well as 18 one-bedroom units at 25, 30, 40, and 50% of area median income, as well as one unrestricted manager's unit. The rents will range from $530 to $1,061 per month for the studio and one-bedroom units. Eligible households and individuals will have incomes ranging from $20,448 to $48,500 based on the 2021 rent and income chart. The 70 future residents, as mentioned before, will be selected from the Housing Commission's project-based housing voucher waiting list. Next slide, please. Should you approve these actions today, the developer plans to apply to SIDLAC and TCAC on September 9th. If successful in this application round, we would bring this item back for Housing Commission Board and Housing Authority approval for the final bond authorization in January of 2022. The developer would then close financing and begin construction February 22 with an anticipated construction completion occurring in August of 2023. Next slide, please. So this is an artist rendering of what the finished product will look like. As I mentioned, there are individual 1- and 2-story buildings. Next slide, please. The development team is summarized on this slide, comprised of Wakeland Housing Development Corporation, Allgaier General Contractors, and Con Management Corporation, to name a few. Next slide, please. Staff recommends that the board take the actions detailed in the staff report and shown on the following slides. Next slide, please. Slide. And next slide, please. I, along with representatives from the developer, are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you for your time. This concludes the presentation.
Thank you. We will now take up the public comments from callers on this item. Do we have any callers at this time?
We do not have any callers on this item.
Thank you. That concludes the public comment period for item 103. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments on the item? Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Mitchell and a second from Commissioner Hester to approve item 103. As I say your name, please state your vote on the motion. Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Hester.
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
I vote in favor of the motion as well, which carries 4-0. Thank you very much, Colin, and everybody else working on that item. Item 104 is the next item, the loan recommendation, preliminary bond authorization, and TEFRA hearing for Cortez Hill Apartments. The TEFRA hearing is now open. The phone line is also now open for public comments about item 104. Please call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. No written public comments were submitted for this item. Again, the number to call is 833-610-2513. We will take public comments after the staff presentation. Director of Multifamily Loan Underwriting, Jennifer Kruder, will present this item. You may begin when you are ready, Jennifer.
Good morning, Vice Chair Kaltner and Commissioners. The item before you today is the request to take the initial steps to issue tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds, hold a TEFRA hearing, and approve a $5 million residual receipts loan to facilitate the new construction of Cortez Hill Apartments. Next slide, please. Cortez Hill Apartments is the proposed construction of an 88-unit project, which is made up of 87 affordable units and 1 unrestricted manager's unit. The project is located at 1449 9th Avenue in the Cortez Hill neighborhood of Council District 3. The proposed project's 87 affordable units will be 1 and 2 bedroom units. 14 of the units will be set aside for households experiencing homelessness, while the remaining 73 will be for households with incomes from 30 to 40% of area median income for 55 years. Resident activities will include community building events, education and skill building classes, and health and wellness workshops/events. Because the site is located in transit priority area, there's high accessibility for transit options. The closest trolley station, 5th Avenue Station, is a half a mile from the site, and the closest bus stop is 1/5 mile from the site. Next slide, please. The developer, Community Housing Works, is an experienced award-winning nonprofit developer. With respect to the proposed development, they received a preliminary award of a Housing Commission loan of up to $5 million for the development. In addition to the loan funds, they were also awarded 87 federal project-based vouchers for the development, 14 of which are permanent supportive housing vouchers. Services for all tenants will be provided by People Assisting the Homeless PATH. Next slide, please. This slide shows the site map of the development. It is located south of the 5 and west of the 163 at 1449 9th Avenue in the Cortez Hill neighborhood of Council District 3. Next slide, please. Here's another site map showing the half a mile walk to the nearest trolley station, which is 5th Avenue Station. Next slide, please. The total development cost of the project will be $43.6 million, which equates to a per unit cost of approximately $496,000. Notable sources of funding include a permanent loan, loans from the Housing and Community Development Multifamily Housing Program and the Housing Commission, a general partner contribution, a deferred developer fee, and tax credits. Next slide, please. Units will be restricted at 30 to 40% of area median income for 55 years. Rents will range from $649 to $1,040 per month. Next slide, please. Should this be approved today, the developer will apply for Housing and Community Development Multifamily Housing Program funds in September 2021 and for bonds in early 2022. Should the developer receive an award of bonds, we anticipate bringing this item back for final bond-related approvals in mid-2022. At this time, in addition to the Housing Commission Board approval, the project will also be brought before the Housing Authority for approval. The developer expects to close construction financing and begin construction in October 2022 and complete construction in May 2024. Next slide, please. Here's an artist rendering of the proposed projects. Next slide. You're considering approvals to take the preliminary steps to issue up to $24.6 million in tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds. Approval of the Bond Issuance and Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act, TEFRA, resolutions does not commit the Housing Authority to issue bonds. The bonds will not constitute a debt of the city. If bonds are ultimately issued for the project, the bonds will not financially obligate the city, the Housing Authority, or the Housing Commission because security of the repayment of the bonds will be limited to specific private revenue sources. Staff recommends that the board take the actions detailed in the staff report and shown on the following slides. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. And next slide. This concludes the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Representatives from the developer are also on the line and are available. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now, sorry, could somebody mute? Thank you. We will now take any public comments from callers on this item. Do we have any callers at this time?
We do not have any callers on this item.
That concludes public comment period for item 104. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments on the item?
I'll just make a comment that I appreciate the fact that staff is adding the transit locations on the maps. I know we had talked about that. I appreciate it. It really helps understand where we're placing people and whether they're going to be able to be mobile via the transit structure. And this Cortez project is interesting, and I think up in that area of downtown, good location. So I'm waiting for a motion on the project. I will make the motion.
I'll second.
Stole the words out of my mouth. Great. We have a motion by Commissioner Mitchell and a second by Commissioner Hester. As I say your name, please state your vote on the motion. Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Hester.
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell. I also vote in favor of the motion, which carries by a vote of 4-0. Thank you very much. Next item is item 105, the preliminary bond authorization and TEFRA hearing for Merge 56 affordable apartments. The TEFRA hearing is now open. The phone line is also open for public comment about item 105. Please call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. No written public comments were submitted for this item. Again, the number to call is 833-610-2513. We will take public comments after the staff presentation. Vice President of Multifamily Housing Finance, Colin Miller, will be presenting this item. Colin, you may begin when you are ready.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Thank you. The item before you today is a request to take the preliminary steps to issue tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds for the construction of the Merge 56 affordable apartments. Next slide, please. The proposed project will be comprised of 47 units, which will be a mix of 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units, all of which will remain affordable for 55 years for individuals and families at 30 to 60% of San Diego's area median income. The development will be built on a vacant parcel on Carmel Mountain Road, south of the Ted Williams Parkway in the Torrey Highlands neighborhood in Council Districts 5 and 6. I'd like to note that no Housing Commission loan funds will be used for this project. Next slide, please. The development is part of a larger to-be-developed master plan community called Merge 56, which will have the uses listed on the slide. The 47 affordable units are required to meet the city's master affordable housing agreement. Next slide, please. Merge 56 affordable will be located on a 0.99 acre parcel that is part of the much larger master plan community being developed by Seabreeze Properties. The site outlined in purple on the slide shown here in detail as the site relates to the surrounding land uses, which are predominantly single family homes and undeveloped land. Next slide. For a more regional perspective, the site is depicted here by the purple dot just south of Highway 56. Next slide, please. As the previous slides have shown, the site is in an undeveloped area of Torrey Highlands. As such, there's not a lot of infrastructure, and mass transit is slightly further than our typical developments. The closest bus stop is just under 2 miles east of the site. Next slide. I'm sorry, east of the site, excuse me. Next slide. The closest trolley station is approximately 7 miles southeast and is expected to come on later this year. Next slide, please. I'd like to point out the City Facilities Benefit Assessment, or FBA, which provides funds for public facilities in the community plan area, and the City Development Impact Fee, or DIF fee, which is collected to mitigate the public facility impacts of new development. These FBA and DIF fees vary depending on the applicable community planning area. Merge 56 is located in the Torrey Highlands area, which has FBA fees of $94,929 per unit, which is the second highest in the city. These FBA fees total approximately $4.46 million for the project and are one of the main contributing factors to the increased development cost per unit. Similar projects that have been brought before the board have been located in Otay Mesa and Scripps Miramar Ranch, which have FBA fees that are $70,000 per unit less than the Torrey Highlands area. Next slide, please. The total development cost of the project will be approximately $29.2 million, which equates to $622,321 per unit. Permanent sources of funding include a conventional loan, a seller contribution of infrastructure, a general partner contribution, tax credit equity, and deferred developer fee. Again, it should be noted that no Housing Commission loan proceeds or any public funds are committed for the project. Now, as mentioned in the previous slide, the development cost per unit is much higher than typical new affordable housing projects in San Diego. It should also be noted that the Housing Commission has actively worked to promote cost containment measures, and our efforts have been noticed by others in the state, including the Executive Director of the California Debt Limit Allocation Committee and Tax Credit Allocation Committee. These increases can be attributed mainly to 2 line items: construction and permits and fees. Current market conditions, which are high demand and low supply of raw materials, continue to drive construction costs up. However, the developer has been able to hedge the increases without the need for public subsidy. Prices for construction materials have increased dramatically over the past few months. Specifically, lumber, concrete, and steel have all seen substantial price increases due to COVID-related production delays. Even as production begins to ramp up, projects are facing shortages of semi-truck drivers, resulting in delivery delays, all of which cost projects money. And we believe that while these market conditions may change in time as the construction trades recover. Therefore, staff will closely monitor this project and, if awarded, will require the developer to update the project with the most current construction amounts from their general contractor. Lastly, these two line items can combined account for more than 73% of the total project cost. Next slide, please. The property will be comprised of 7 one-bedroom, 24 two-bedroom, 11 three-bedroom, and 4 four-bedroom units at 30, 50, and 60% of area median income, as well as 1 restricted manager's unit at 60% of area median income. Rents will range from $682 to $2,109 per month for the 1 through 4 bedroom units. Eligible households and individuals will have incomes ranging from $29,100 to $78,540 based on the 2021 rent and income chart. Next slide, please. Should you approve these actions today, the developer will apply to SIDLAC and TCAC on September 9th. If successful in this application round, we would bring this item back to the Housing Commission Board and Housing Authority for final bond authorization in January of 2022. The developer will then close financing in February of 2022 and begin construction in March, with an anticipated construction completion occurring in August of 2023. Next slide, please. This slide shows the current condition of the property. Next slide. And this is an artist rendering of what the finished product will look like. Next slide. The development team is comprised of the following: Rise Urban Partners as developer, Redstone Equity Partners as the tax credit limited partner, Hydro Company as the management company, and CW Driver as the construction contractor. Should note that the developer went out to 6 different contractors for bid, and CW Driver Construction was the lowest responsive construction contractor that responded. Next slide, please. Staff is recommending that the board take the actions detailed in the staff report and shown on the following slides. Next slide, please. Next slide. I, along with representatives from the developer, are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you for your time. This concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Colin. We will now take any public comments from callers on this item. Do we have any callers at this time?
We do not have any callers on this item.
Thank you, Scott. This concludes the public comment period for item 105. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments on the item?
Chairman Clemmer, I just would make a comment that I think the fee assessment on this project is the thing that causes me the greatest anxiety, and Colin is aware of my concerns. I think, you know, if there's a way to keep an area from ever having affordable housing projects, this fee structure as currently set up is the best way to do that. And I think it's something that the city council needs to address, and they need to address it quickly, because you know you won't be able to spread projects around the city to meet the housing crisis, to meet the needs that we see. If the barrier is just $622,000 a unit, as Colin spelled out. So I think that's one concern I have. The other concern I would just say is, again, this goes back to what Mr. Gentry has heard me say, is having conversations with Sandag about their transportation focus and the big moves. If you're going to build along the 56, you're going to have to do a better job, because Colin, I appreciate the fact that the nearest bus connection is 2 miles away, but for anybody that knows that area, no one's going to walk from that project to that bus location, not without putting their life at risk. It's just not going to happen. So, but this is one of those things where Sandag needs to think about how they work with us and identify options for that 56 corridor, because there are opportunities to build along that corridor, but you have to have some sort of transit option that is reliable, reasonable, and realistic.
Colin, what is the size of the units? I noticed that we didn't, there weren't any square footage information on it.
Yeah, for the 1 through 4 bedroom units, I'm hoping the developer can chime in with the square footage. I don't have that in the report. So if Dave or Rob are on the call.
Hey, Colin, Rob Morgan here. Give me one quick sec to pull that up in our
While you're doing that, I just want to echo what Commissioner Mitchell stated about the distance, the 2-mile distance from the transportation, because I share the same concern even in the Linda Vista unit, right? Because that hike from where Linda Vista is to the trolley station is still quite a bit. So just want to echo the concern of Commissioner Mitchell on the transportation.
Yeah, and Commissioner Hester, the Linda Vista one, I didn't say anything, but you're right. I mean, imagine getting off the trolley at Hazard Center and walking back up to that project. I mean, that itself is disincentive.
It's a hike. It's uphill.
Straight uphill. It's straight uphill. And if you're carrying groceries or other components, you're not going to do it.
So I really hope we can figure out with the transportation solution here. Thank you. And I'll wait for Mr. Morgan to respond.
And in terms of sizes, the 1-bedrooms are about 640 square feet. The 2-bedroom, 1-bath are about 845. The 3-bed, 2-baths are about 1,100. And the 4-bed, 2-baths are about 1,300 square feet.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. If there's no other commissioner comments, I just want to echo what Commissioner Mitchell was saying with respect to the fee structure. I think anybody that spends a lot of time thinking about the broader issue of housing policy and affordable housing, it's very clear to us that the big picture challenge is how you distribute affordable housing equitably, and slowly try to chip away at the decades and decades of concentrating it. Originally with redlining, and then post Fair Housing Act, there's been other policies that forced it to be concentrated in very small areas that had all kinds of other effects on schools and health and a whole host of problems that we cannot solve all of those problems. And while I have no doubt that the entire city council is very focused on sort of the question of how you distribute affordable housing equitably, this is just kind of a classic example of how one policy on one end that is related to fees that doesn't have affordable housing in mind creates an enormous push in the wrong direction in terms of where we distribute affordable housing, and makes it so much harder to build it in places like this where we do want to be trying to build it. And so putting aside, I think, what are very reasonable concerns about the transportation issues that are, something for Sandag to deal with, it seems like that fee structure, I just, hope anybody at city council level who's watching this, and when this goes in front of them, that they use this as an example to kind of think about whether we need to make some changes there, because we do. Mr. Gentry, I see you. Yes.
And I agree totally, Mr. Chairman, what you're saying. And Commissioner Mitchell and I have had this conversation on this issue a number of times. And from a staff perspective, we have complained and fussed to our counterparts at City Hall any number of times. I think this would be a very useful exercise if you all are willing to engage in board, commissioner, and housing authority dialogue. And with your permission, I'll proceed to set something up, and I'll figure out what the proper entree point of the city council should be, perhaps land use, perhaps not, I'll find that out. But I think that this would be to carry very great weight coming from you all as well. So I'll proceed to set that up as soon as I can.
Yeah, Chairman Clemmer, I'll make a motion on the project, but with an addition that a letter go from the Housing Commission to the Housing Authority, requesting a discussion and a review of the fee structures and the barriers they will create related to distribution of affordable housing throughout the city.
We will.
I very much like that motion. I do want to give Commissioner Davis a chance to comment. I see your hand before we take up the motion. So
yes, I'd like to know if there's any way that one of the entities involved could arrange for a daily once or twice shuttle before there's better transportation, because I agree, a lot of people won't be able to even shop for groceries if they have to walk 2 miles up a hill. So has that been taken into consideration?
Yeah, so this is Colin. But we've seen so far, as far as the amenities provided, have to do more with the on-site. We have not talked to the developer about having any sort of transit, but we can have that conversation with them, absolutely.
Thank you.
I think that's a fantastic suggestion, although I would hate for us to do anything that would derail this moving forward, because the biggest problem that we do need is more units, regardless of what sort of issues there are around them. But I would just echo what Commissioner Davis just said, Colin, and I don't know, maybe given that we're spending much more time thinking about the transit issues related to this, maybe in the future that's something that can kind of be built into the process earlier on in the NOFA or something, to ask developers to kind of incorporate concerns about distance to transit in some proactive way on the start of the process. Commissioner Mitchell, I believe you had a motion.
Yeah, I make a motion to approve the project and direct Housing Commission staff to send a letter to the Housing Authority requesting a review of the fee structures and the potential barriers they're creating for the distribution of affordable housing throughout the city.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Mitchell and a second by Commissioner Hester. As I say your name, please vote on the motion. Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Hester.
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
I also vote in favor of the motion, which carries by a vote of 4-0. Thank you all very much, including the developers who were here to answer questions. Really appreciate having you there. Item 106 is the approval of an amended memorandum of understanding and authorization of additional funding for the COVID-19 Housing Stability Assistance Program. The phone line is now open for public comments about item 106. Please call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. No written public comments were submitted for this item. Again, the number is 833-610-2513. We will take public comments after the staff presentation. Executive Vice President of Rental Assistance, Asusena. I'm sorry, I always mess up your name. My apology. I will present on this item. We will begin when you are ready.
Thank you. Well, good morning, Vice Chair Klubner and Commissioners. This morning, I am presenting recommended actions to authorize the use of additional funds for the COVID-19 Housing Stability Assistance Program to help families pay their rent and utilities. Next slide, please. The San Diego City Council authorized the Housing Stability Assistance Program on February 22nd, 2021. The program helps pay rent and utilities for qualifying households with low income who experience financial hardship because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Housing Commission operates the program, and we launched an online application portal on March 15th of 2021. Next slide. More than 14,300 applications have been submitted to request help from the program since it launched. Close to 74% of applicants have extremely low income, which is up to 30% of the area median income. An additional 21% have income between 31 and 50% of the area median income. In addition, more than 12,700 additional applications have been started and are pending completion. Housing Commission staff continue to work diligently to review applications and disperse payments as quickly as possible to help qualifying households. We began issuing payments in late April, and as of yesterday, we have dispersed approximately $40 million to help more than 5,500 households with low income. Next slide, please. The funding authorized for this program included more than $83.7 million budgeted for assistance payments. A combination of federal funds support this program. Funds allocated directly to the city from the U.S. Department of Treasury, funds the state allocated to the city through Senate Bill 91, and CARES Act Community Development Block Grant funds. Next slide, please. Based on the applications we received in the first 6 weeks of the program, as well as information that we obtained from the County of San Diego about their program, we began advocating changes to the funding requirements. The Housing Commission identified necessary updates to the state's program requirements, including allowing the program to pay 100% of rent obligations for qualifying households. These updates were necessary to ensure that funds allocated to the San Diego region would be obligated and expended in the San Diego region by the deadlines the state had set. The Housing Commission advocated for these changes in April, May, and June. And California lawmakers incorporated these changes into Assembly Bill 832, which Governor Gavin Newsom signed into law on June 28th. With these changes, the Housing Commission anticipates fully expending all of the coronavirus relief funds allocated to the Housing Stability Assistance Program and may have the potential need for additional funds to assist all of the existing eligible applicants. The additional funding would also be used to help households who continue to submit new applications on a daily basis. We continue to receive new applications each day through the application portal, which remains open. Next slide, please. Additional federal funding is available to help more households through the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA. President Joe Biden signed this act into law in March. The city of San Diego has received an allocation of $54.5 million in ARPA funds directly from the U.S. Department of the Treasury. These funds will support the continuation of the COVID-19 Housing Stability Assistance Program. This will help more households avoid being displaced from their homes. Additional state funding is also available. The state transferred more funding to the city of San Diego than previously was authorized to be spent for the Housing Stability Assistance Program. As a result, an additional $5.6 million from the state will help the program continue. Combined, these resources provide $60.1 million to provide assistance and cover the costs of administering the program. Mayor Gloria is evaluating the potential uses for these additional funds if they are not fully expended through the Housing Stability Assistance Program. Next slide, please. Today, staff is requesting that the Housing Commission Board recommend that the Housing Authority and the City Council take the actions detailed in the staff report and shown on the next 3 slides. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. That concludes my presentation. I, along with Molly Chase, Vice President of Policy, are available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. We will not take any public comments from callers on this item. Do we have any callers at this time? Thank you. This concludes the public comment period for item 106. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments on the item?
I will just make one comment, which is I know that everybody's beginning to think about other ways to use the money. Again, I will reiterate my comment I made earlier about Molly, Jeff, Rick. You guys are doing a fantastic job trying to connect with people to give them the help they need. I think I know that you're going to exhaust all efforts to help people. But again, as people are beginning to think about other ways, I'm hearing this at the county as well. It does concern me because I want to make sure that we are putting forth the full effort to truly help to provide this support. And I also believe that there are those that believe there's going to be an economic correction coming soon, and these funds will be helpful to those who are impacted by that economic correction. So I just would be very careful because we may have this a situation a year from now where people need more support because of the economic correction.
Mr. Gentry.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Appreciate those kind words about staff. And I'd just like to point out that this program is another good example of staff. Mr. Davis, Ms. Valladolid, Ms. Chase, and others who've been involved and cannot forget homelessness either, Lisa, in making sure that we respond to program opportunities that may not be traditional under our bailiwick, but that we respond to get them done as best we can. And this one has been a huge effort. And I suspect, Mr. Mitchell, there are going to be more funding opportunities flowing over the next year. I don't see it drying up anytime soon. And we will be ready, willing, and able to either lead from ahead or lead from behind, which tends to be more often the case for us with the city as we are called upon to do so.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? If not, do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Davis and a second from Commissioner Hester to approve item 106. As I say your name, please state your vote on the motion. Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Hester.
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
And I also had my motion in favor, which carries by a vote of 4-0. Item 107 is the next item, an informational workshop about the homelessness system performance dashboards. The phone line is now open for public comments about item 107. Please call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. No written public comments were submitted for this item. Again, the number to call is 833-610-2513. We will take public comments after the staff presentation. Executive Vice President of Strategic Initiatives, Lisa Jones, will present this item. You may begin when you're ready.
Good morning, commissioners. I am trying to make sure I'm actually sharing the right screen right now, so I apologize. I cannot see what you see. Communications, do I have this up correctly? I don't feel like I don't.
You're showing a Word file, Lisa, instead of.
All right, let me try this again. I apologize. I'm sorry, this is why communications does this and not me. And now I can't see your screens at all. Oh, okay, here we go. Scott, it's not letting me escape my share screen. Oh, here we go. Wait a minute, I think I figured it out. All right, I think I can get this to you. This is okay. I'm moving it over there. I'm trying to get it in the right direction. I have too many screens open.
Lisa, would you, oh, you got it, never mind. There we go.
All right, sorry about that.
No problem.
I feel like I've achieved a great feat here. My apologies. All right. So we're very excited to be presenting the Housing Commission's new homelessness services and housing programs system performance dashboards. The Administrative Department of the Homeless Housing Innovations Division oversees all of the Housing Commission's. I apologize. Are you still seeing? Are you seeing? Okay, we're good. All of the Housing Commission's funded homeless shelter housing and services contracts, which includes extensive monthly collection and analysis of key performance metrics and demographics. The goal of these new dashboards is to present publicly available information on how the City of San Diego and Housing Commission funded programs are performing as a system. The dashboards will be published on the Housing Commission website for policymakers, community stakeholders, and the general public to have access to information that details how the different types of homelessness interventions are performing against industry standard best practice metrics. One of the guiding principles detailed in the Community Action Plan on Homelessness for the City of San Diego is to make data-driven decisions and create transparency. These dashboards support that intention. I'm going to go ahead and click the link to bring the dashboards up. It takes a minute for them to load, few seconds for them to load. I believe, once again, you can't see these, so let me make sure that these are showing up for you. Okay, it's not showing up.
You can see them.
You can see them?
Yes, we did. Now we don't. Okay.
Wonderful. Okay, so apologies and thanks to comms for getting this right all the time. Because I'm clearly not perfect at this. So this is the landing page of the dashboards. The landing page describes to the user what they're going to see in the dashboards in regards to the information that's contained around overview pages and then specific project types. We still have under development an additional items here, which will talk about the definitions used on this, but I'll walk through the different tabs. So the dashboards have tabs that run along the top. but you can also click on the different panes to go to specific project types for every dashboard. I'll note that these are the first phase of the dashboards that are anticipated to go live in August. The second phase, which will follow in the coming months, will include additional tabs. So they'll include information on prevention diversion, which is under development, and supportive services, including day centers, safe parking, storage centers, and family reunification. We are also doing a very short overview as part of a larger update to City Council on July 20th on these dashboards, and then a deeper dive into the dashboards at Land Use and Housing on July 23rd. So clicking on this first pane, it brings up what we call an overview tab. And this identifies the number of persons served by all city and housing commission funded programs in a specific time period. If you note over to the left of the screen where my arrow is, there are start dates and end dates. The data in these dashboards goes back as far as July 2019, so that previous fiscal year. And right now the data is updated through March of 2021. Staff are currently in the process of updating it to last month's data. So you can choose the time period within which you want to look from July 2019 forward. So this captures about 12, 13, 14, 15 months worth of data, right? What it does is it tells you how many individuals were served in the system during this time period. So this actually really speaks to some of the conversations that Vice Chair Klempner and Commissioner Mitchell were having earlier about understanding what the flow through in our system is. In this time period, 10,841 individual households were served. I'm not going to go into every data point on the dashboards. I would keep you here for a long time, and I certainly could, but I want to point out some key components. Every time you hover over a number, we have put in definitions that explain what it's telling you, what a household is, and what that data set is that the user is looking at. We've tried to do this in a way with language that people easily understand, and can so that any public can understand what these data points mean. So you have households served versus newly homeless, and this is the count of unique households who entered an SDHC or city program during the time frame that did not have a prior entry into the homeless service system in the prior 24 months. And this is a HUD definition. It goes down and then it breaks it down to how these households were served by project type. The number that were entering shelter, the number utilizing transitional housing, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, all the different interventions that the Housing Commission and the city fund. And it also notes here that in this case, these numbers are not duplicated. Someone might have been in shelter and then gone to permanent housing, as an example. The next one talks about the numbers housed during the same time period. So 5,358 in housing during this time period, of which 2,073 were newly housed. And the tooltip explains what newly housed means, which means they entered a housing program in that time period. Total housed includes people that were already housed in a program when the time period started. That just gives a brief overview of the homeless program's overview tabs. The second overview tab will load now. And this really shows who's entering the system during the time period and how that compares to a previous time period. So it's comparing it to the previous time period of the same rate and whether or not the numbers served have gone up or down. It also breaks down demographics. So what household types were utilizing the services within the system during that time period? 79% were adults, veterans represent 12%, families with children 4%, and transition age youth 5%. It also details the living situation prior to entry into one of the homeless housing programs. And then how many were active on the end of this time period? So again, the time period here goes through 3/31. How many were active, still enrolled in a program as of the 31st of March? And the total number of households, the number in housing, the number in shelter services, and breaks them down into demographics again. You can go back to the welcome page to click on any of the next tabs, or you can click on them along the top. Clicking on shelters brings up industry standard best performance metrics related to shelter. The number of households served and explaining what that means, the number of households newly enrolled in shelter, and the households active as of March 31st, 2021. And this is reflective in the majority of the folks that were just leaving Operation Shelter to Home as we reactivated our shelter system. This details the living situation prior to shelter and the number of entries into shelter. So if someone has come in and out of shelter repeatedly in that same time period, it'll detail that. Average length of stay for someone currently enrolled, and average length of stay for folks who exited to a permanent housing resource. And then breaks the household served down by household type. Critical to performance is exit rate. So households destination exit by type. So of the total served during the time period, there were 3,002 exits, and it breaks it down to permanent housing, temporary housing, institutional setting, back to the streets. Unknown is always a large percentage, and that's usually people exiting the shelter system without conducting an exit interview. It's essentially identical metrics under best practices for transitional housing performance, so I won't go over this in a great detail, but it breaks down the same performance for transitional housing. As we go into rapid rehousing, the metrics are specific to rapid rehousing, so they'll look a little different. They'll look at housing stability, enrollments, households served, households housed during the period. So 407 were served during the same period, and the number of households that were housed during the same period, 76%. Normally we would see that a bit higher in previous years. We usually have. COVID certainly had its impacts. I'll note here that on these individual tabs by project type, whether it's rapid rehousing, shelter, or transitional housing, you can also break them down by veteran status, age, primary race. So you can dig into different demographics and load that data as well. As we go on to permanent housing, the metrics look slightly different. They're not that dissimilar from rapid rehousing, but they change slightly. They look at the number served, stabilization rates, length of enrollment in supportive housing, and when they do exit permanent housing, where they're exiting to. Street outreach performance is one of our newest tabs that we've been developing, particularly with the new coordinated outreach projects that were approved October and that you approved today. Looks at households served, new households enrolled during the time period, and households active as of the last date of the time period, which is that 3/31 date. We're also working on pulling data reporting in regards to engagements and contacts. So enrollment is when someone has worked intensely enough with a case that they're willing to enroll their data in HMIS and take ongoing street-based case management. Contacts may be someone that's not willing to share that information, but we just want to know how many contacts are being had. That data is still being developed in HMIS and will be pulled in here. It looks again at prior entries into outreach, and it also looks at average length of time in that outreach service. You'll note that down here, and this is under development, there's a link to another map. And this map breaks information down by council district. So this breaks it down into neighborhoods. And you can show the neighborhoods on the map, or you can just show it by council district, breaks it down by council district, and then it breaks down the different services. So if you hover over each district, District 3 being a good example, it breaks down the types of services that are being delivered through this through this map. This is still in development, but we anticipate it going live sometime in August with the rest of the dashboards. We go back to the main dashboard and click on our last tab that we're going to review today, which is Return to Homelessness. So one of the things that is unique about these dashboards is rather than just pulling reports out of our individual projects that we administer and oversee within HMIS, the Homeless Management Information System, this data that we get is actually a full data download of the HMIS from RTFH that they provide to us on a monthly basis. And why that matters is we cannot look at where people end up later in the system and look at returns to homelessness without having the full picture of data that's available. So having this anonymized but uniquely identified data set that is downloaded from RTFH allows us to pull in a lot more data. You'll notice that there's just percentages right now and there's not numbers. We are doing final verification of the custom programming that was developed with this and quality assurance with the Regional Task Force on the Homeless. These will be populated and you'll be able to tell for our shelter system how frequently and what the percentages of people that exit to permanent destination then come back into shelter within 6 months, within 12 months, within 24 months. And these lengths of time are based on best practice standards of looking at returns to homelessness data. So we will include those as well. I'm going to go back to our homepage. And just there's obviously we could spend a lot of time looking at the deep data. We have more another second phase that will be coming online. We anticipate this phase going online. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen for now, but happy to pop it back up. Our second phase is anticipated to go online probably in October. This phase is anticipated to be publicly posted in August. I did want to note that I'd just like to take a moment to say a special thank you to Barbara Chevrolet, data analyst from the Homeless Housing Innovations Division, and Scott Steele, business intelligence analyst in the Information Technologies Division, who have been working over the past 18 months on the detailed programming, visualizations, data quality assurance, and information shared in these dashboards, and for the many hours that they dedicated to making these dashboards a reality and ensuring that they're user-friendly for our community. The real goal of these dashboards is to create that transparent, public-facing information that policymakers and community stakeholders can see, and that we can better understand, like our commissioners mentioned earlier, how many people are entering our system in any given year, where they're going, how they're being served, what are the percentage of exits from that system, so we can understand at a systems level how our funded programs are performing. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. That was fascinating. Well done. Do we have any callers for public comment on this item?
We do not.
Okay. That concludes the public comment period for item 107. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments on the item?
I think I will echo what you said. I think it's fascinating. I love the dashboard, Lisa. I think the one portion of the dashboard that shows the services by district will create conversation.
Thank you for creating this dashboard, Lisa, and your team that helped you put it together.
Yes, I was going to say, the team. Thank you.
And the team that put it together.
Thank you so much. And, go ahead.
Commissioner Davis, I think I saw your hand up.
Yes, I was just going to add that this is an amazing dashboard, and it's even easy enough for me to understand. It's wonderful. I just really appreciate how detailed and how simple you've made the explanations so that everyone will be able to follow it. Thank you very much for you and your team. Thank you.
Ditto. Rick.
Just a couple of comments to belabor the obvious, I guess. Lisa mentioned that this was a result of 18 months of work with two or three people, both program staff and IT staff, working together with a lot of other staff to put this together. This was a huge amount of work. And it quantifies the inadequate analogy I've been using forever, that the point in time count may be arithmetic and improvements may be algebra. But what we're really looking at in this endeavor is differential calculus, with an ever-changing set of numbers and vectors that affect each other all the time. And so we got to take into account it's a dynamic situation with income and outgo and changing bottom line, which I don't think means as much as the parameters of movement, if you will, within the number system here. So Lisa, I'm going to ask you a question. I should have asked you before, and I just now thought of it. Are we aware of anyone else in the country who's put together this sort of an intricate display of numbers in this program, or did we do this originally ourselves?
So regional continuums of care, as you know, Rick, as the chair of RTFH, have regional data that is aggregated that provides some trending. I don't know of a dashboard that goes into this level of detail that's specific to a smaller region. I'm not saying it's not out there, but if they are, I'm not sure how accessible they are. Thank you, Maggie, for mentioning. We worked really hard to make sure that they were easy for people to understand, that they answered questions rather than caused them, right?
I really cared about hovering over the district and the type of services that's provided in that particular district, and I particularly cared about seeing families with children being serviced, along with, oh God, what is the term? Our youth that are homeless, and how we're serving them. So those are the two numbers I personally follow.
And another number set I might point out that I think is truly significant was in the outreach. They showed 700 some odd families serviced and another 700 some odd families brand new coming into the system. So I don't think we can, one measurement is to reduction in the number of families that are homeless. And that's what we're all aiming for, and I get it. But another measure that I think is significant is the number of families served in this process. And something that Mr. Mitchell and I have had a lot of conversation about is that there are a lot of factors that contribute to the creation of homelessness that are way beyond the ability of the Housing Commission to deal with, having to do with the affordability generally of an area, having to do with other resources that are available. And we're doing our part. But I think going forward, the ability to further project, Mr. Mitchell, as we talk, other things that we could, if not address, at least surface to be addressed, that could be a big factor here. Not the least of which is the difficulty getting properties approved and built in this city, and the ever eroding affordability level of San Diego. And if you go back to some of the other real estate items that were on the agenda earlier today, which is more of the traditional Housing Commission role, the real answer is more product, whether it's by the market or by a subsidy system. And until we can get more product out there, I think that these numbers are going to be difficult to get down appreciably. Thank you, sir.
I will, if I may, just make one note, just so I was clear about the council district distribution. That distribution of services by council district is specific to outreach workers. So it's the services that are being delivered through outreach workers by council district. We don't have geo mapping for all of the other programs by council district. A lot of those programs, particularly housing programs and tenant-based housing programs, we would not display where people are living, right, in different places, but that's specific by outreach. I will also note that our Veterans Affairs supportive housing vouchers are being built into the HMIS system. The VA does not enter data for VASH into HMIS. They enter into a separate system, but we are working with our VA partners in the RTFH, and the special programs team of the Rental Assistance Division will be valiantly taking on that activity on behalf of the VA to make sure that we also have our VASH data in there. So very excited that that will increase our numbers and better demonstrate our work. It does include all of our other permanent supportive housing programs that we provide vouchers to throughout the community.
Great. Since this is an informational item, no action is required if there's no further questions or comments from the commissioners. The Housing Commission Board will now convene in closed session. The phone line is now open for public comments about the closed session agenda. Please call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. No written public comments were submitted for the closed session. Again, the number to call is 833-610-2513. Mr. Christensen, will you please announce the closed session agenda for this morning?
Yes, thank you. I will.
I'm sorry, I need to interrupt. We still have a number of people online that need to leave.
And just to be clear here, the court reporter should not leave.
Hello. Hi, I'm Sequoia. I am the court reporter. I'm here. I just asked that before you start the closed session, you allow me to state when we're on the record.
Thank you. We will.
Thank you.
Clarify, at this point, we're allowing for public comment before going into closed session, is my understanding?
That's correct.
Okay. We have about 30 seconds left on the clock for people to call in to provide public comment before we close.
But I can, as the vice chair stated, I can announce what and it might be a good idea to do it, what the closed session agenda is. Roman numeral 4A is a matter dealing with the lawsuit entitled Affordable Housing Coalition of San Diego County versus the City of San Diego. That's existing litigation. Item B is the case of SDHC versus BOSA Development.
You need to leave closed session.
And the last one is conference with legal counsel, re-anticipated litigation.
Vice Chair Klempner, we do not have any callers for public comment, so that concludes the comment period.
Great. This concludes the public comment period for this item. After closed session, the board will reconvene in open session, and General Counsel Chuck Christensen will announce actions taken during the closed session. I'm going to wait now for the public feed to end.
All right. The Housing Commission met in closed session to discuss its closed session agenda. With respect to item Roman numeral 4A, that was informational only and no action was taken. With respect to item Roman numeral 4B, the case of San Diego Housing Commission versus BOSA, by a vote of 4-0, the commission gave authorization to council concerning the further handling of that case. And on the matter of 4C, which is the anticipated litigation, the board gave direction to council as referenced within the transcript created of this meeting, and council is directed to report back in closed session to the Housing Authority the results of this of these votes. That concludes the matters that were discussed in closed session. And we're in open.
Thank you. Chuck, is this where I pick up?
Yeah.
Okay. This is Ryan Klempner, Vice Chair of the Housing Commission Board of Commissioners. The board has concluded its closed session and is reconvened. Have we already reconvened, Chuck?
Yeah. Yes, and we have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chuck already read that. This concludes the board's special meeting today. The meeting is adjourned at 11:57 a.m. Thank you all for your time very much.
Thank you very much.
And Chuck and Jeff, can we use this same line to talk